Welcome to the Secret Code Machine. Welcome to the channel. Please consider subscribing. I produce videos daily covering a wide variety of cloud topics with focus on networking. Also, hit the bell icon to get notified of new videos. Hey there, future codebreaker. Today, we are going on an amazing adventure to learn about AES, which stands for Advanced Encryption Standard. But do not let the fancy name scare you. We are going to make it super easy to understand. Imagine you have a super secret diary, and you want to make sure nobody can read it except you. AES is like the most amazing lock in the world that scrambles your words so they look like gibberish to everyone else, but you can unscramble them perfectly because you have the special key. AES is used everywhere. When you send messages on your phone, when your parents shop online, when you watch videos, and even when banks send money. It is the superhero of keeping secrets safe on the internet. The coolest part? Even the most powerful computers in the world cannot crack AES if you use it correctly. It is like having an unbreakable secret code. What is encryption? Before we dive into AES, let's understand what encryption means. Imagine you write a note that says "Meet me at the park," but you don't want your little brother to understand it if he finds it. So you decide to change every letter to the next letter in the alphabet. Your message becomes NFFU NFBUUIFQBSL. That's encryption. You've turned your readable message into something that looks like nonsense. But here's the magic. You and your friend know the secret rule. Shift each letter by 1. So, your friend can turn it back into the real message. That's called decryption. Now, real encryption like AES is much more complicated than this simple example, but the basic idea is the same. Take something that makes sense, scramble it up using a secret rule, and only people who know that secret rule can unscramble it. The secret rule in AES is called the key, and it's like a super complicated password. Without the key, the scrambled message just looks like random garbage that makes no sense at all. Why do we need AES? You might be wondering, why do we need such a fancy encryption system? Can't we just use simpler codes? Well, here's the thing. There are people out there called hackers who spend all day trying to crack secret codes. They have powerful computers that can try millions of different codes every second. Simple codes that were good enough 50 years ago can now be broken in seconds. That's where AES comes in. It's so strong that even the fastest supercomputers in the world would take longer than the age of the universe to crack it. That's not an exaggeration. We're talking about trillions of years. This is super important because we send so much important information over the internet. When your parents buy something online, they type in their credit card number. Without AES, a hacker could steal that number and buy things with your parents' money. When you send a private message to your friend, without encryption, anyone could read it. When banks transfer money, without AES, thieves could change the amounts. AES keeps all of this safe. It's like having an invisible, unbreakable safe around everything important you send over the internet. The magic 4x4 grid. Here is where AES gets really interesting. Instead of thinking about your message as just letters or words, AES thinks about it as a special grid, like a tic-tac-toe board, but it is 4 squares by 4 squares, for a total of 16 squares. This is called the state, and it is the heart of how AES works. Imagine you have 16 small blocks, and each block can hold a number from 0 to 255. You arrange these blocks in a 4x4 grid. Your message gets converted into numbers and placed in this grid. For example, the letter A might become the number 65, the letter B becomes 66, and so on. Every letter, number, or symbol in your message becomes a number in one of these 16 boxes. Once your message is in this grid format, AES is going to perform some really clever operations to scramble it up. Think of it like this. If your message were a Rubik's Cube, right now all the colors would be organized. AES is going to twist and turn that cube in very specific, very complicated ways so that the colors are all mixed up. But because AES knows exactly which twists and turns it made, it can also undo them perfectly when it is time to unscramble the message. The secret key. Remember how I said you need a key to lock and unlock AES? Let's talk about what that key actually is. The key is like a super long, super complicated password, but instead of being made of letters and numbers you can remember, it's a string of random numbers that looks like gibberish. AES keys come in 3 sizes: 128 bits, 192 bits, or 256 bits. Let's talk about what a bit is. It's the tiniest piece of information a computer can have, and it's either a 0 or a 1. So a 128-bit key is a string of 128 zeros and ones. That might look like, beginning with 10 ending with 01. Imagine 128 numbers like this. But here's the really mind-blowing part. With a 128-bit key, there are so many possible combinations that if you tried to guess the key by trying every possible combination, and you could try 1 billion keys per second, it would take you an incredibly long time to try them all. That's way longer than the universe has existed. And 256-bit keys are even more secure. The number of possible combinations is so big, it's hard to even imagine. The key is super important because it controls exactly how AES scrambles your message. Without the correct key, unscrambling the message is basically impossible. Round and round we go. AES does not just scramble your message once, it scrambles it over and over again in what we call rounds. Think of it like mixing cake batter. If you only stir once, the ingredients are not mixed well. But if you stir it 10 times, 12 times, or 14 times, everything gets really well mixed. AES does the same thing with your message. Depending on your key size, AES does different numbers of rounds. With a 128-bit key, it does 10 rounds. With a 192-bit key, it does 12 rounds. And with a 256-bit key, it does 14 rounds. Each round does the same 4 special operations to scramble the message more and more. It is like putting your message through a scrambling machine, then putting the scrambled result through the machine again, and again, and again. By the time AES is done with all those rounds, your original message is so scrambled that it is absolutely impossible to figure out what it was without the key. Even if someone tried to work backwards through all those rounds, they would need the key to undo each operation. And remember, each round is using that super complicated key we talked about, so without the key, you are stuck. Step 1. SubBytes, the substitution magic. Now let's look at the first magic trick AES does in each round. It's called SubBytes, which is short for substitute bytes. Remember our 4x4 grid with 16 numbers? In this step, AES takes each number in the grid and replaces it with a completely different number using a special lookup table called the S-box. Think of it like this. Imagine you have a secret code book. The book has 256 pages, numbered from 0 to 255. On each page is a different number. So if you have the number 65 in your grid, you look up page 65 in the code book, and you find the number 151 there. So you replace 65 with 151. You do this for all 16 numbers in your grid. The S-box is super clever because it's designed mathematically to make the substitution as confusing as possible. The new number isn't predictable from the old number. There's no simple pattern like add 5 or multiply by 2. It's all jumbled up. This means that if a hacker sees the scrambled message, they can't easily figure out patterns. Even if 2 letters in your original message were the same, after SubBytes they'll be in different positions in different rounds, and the whole grid is getting mixed, so they'll end up completely different in the final scrambled message. ShiftRows, which operates like a sliding puzzle. The second magic trick is called ShiftRows, and it is like one of those sliding tile puzzles you might have played with. Remember our 4x4 grid? Think of each row as a line of tiles that can slide left or right. In ShiftRows, AES slides each row by a different amount. Here is how it works. The first row, the top row, does not move at all. It stays exactly where it is. The second row slides one position to the left. So, if your second row was ABCD, it becomes BCDA. The third row slides two positions to the left. So EFGH becomes GHEF, and the fourth row slides three positions to the left. Why do we do this? Well, imagine if we only did the SubBytes step. All the numbers would change, but they would stay in the same positions. That means the corners would always stay as corners, and the middle numbers would always stay in the middle. ShiftRows mixes up the positions too. Now, the number that was in the top right corner might end up in the bottom left corner after several rounds. This spreading out is super important because it means every part of your message affects every other part after a few rounds. It is like shuffling a deck of cards. You are making sure everything gets thoroughly mixed up. MixColumns, the blender. The third magic trick is called MixColumns, and this is where things get really wild. If SubBytes was like replacing ingredients and ShiftRows was like rearranging them, then MixColumns is like putting everything in a blender. In this step, AES takes each column of our 4x4 grid. Remember, a column goes up and down, and does some seriously fancy math to mix all four numbers in that column together. The result is four new numbers that are based on combinations of all four original numbers. Here's a simple way to think about it. Imagine you have four colors of paint in a column: red, blue, yellow, and green. MixColumns is like taking specific amounts of each color and mixing them together to create four entirely new colors. The first new color might be made from 2 parts red plus 3 parts blue plus 1 part yellow plus 1 part green. The second new color is a different mixture, and so on. But here's the cool part. The mixing recipe is reversible. When you need to decrypt, you can use a reverse recipe to get back the original four colors. The actual math AES uses is something called matrix multiplication in a Galois field. Don't worry about what that means. Just know it's a special type of math that mixes the numbers in a way that's really hard to undo unless you know the secret key. After MixColumns, every number in a column depends on all the other numbers in that column. This creates even more mixing and makes the encryption super strong. Step 4. AddRoundKey, mixing in the secret. The fourth and final step in each round is called AddRoundKey, and this is where your secret key comes into play. Remember that super long key we talked about earlier? AES breaks that key into smaller pieces, and in each round, it uses one piece. Think of it like this. You have a secret ingredient that makes your recipe special. In each round of mixing, you add a little bit of that secret ingredient. This step is actually simpler than the others to understand. AES takes each number in your grid and combines it with a number from the key piece using something called XOR. XOR is like a special kind of addition that's easy to undo if you know what was added, but impossible to undo if you don't. Here's a simple example. If you have the number 100 in your grid and the number 75 from your key, XOR might give you 47. To decrypt later, you XOR 47 with 75 again, and you magically get back 100. But if someone doesn't have that key number 75, they can't figure it out. This step is crucial because it ties everything to your secret key. Without AddRoundKey, someone might eventually figure out the SubBytes, ShiftRows, and MixColumns operations. But with AddRoundKey, every round is different because it uses a different piece of the key, and without that key, the whole thing is impossible to crack. Putting it all together. Now, let's see how all four steps work together in one complete round. Imagine you are a chef making the world's most complicated recipe. First, you substitute ingredients using your secret recipe book. That is SubBytes. Then, you rearrange the ingredients on your counter by sliding rows of ingredients. That is ShiftRows. Next, you put groups of ingredients in your magic blender that mixes them in special proportions. That is MixColumns. Finally, you add your secret spice mixture. That is AddRoundKey. Now, here is the amazing part. You do this entire process 10, 12, or 14 times, depending on your key size. Each time through, your message gets more and more scrambled. After the first round, your message is already pretty scrambled. After the second round, it is even more scrambled. By the time you have done all 10 to 14 rounds, your message is so scrambled that it looks like completely random gibberish. There is no pattern, no clue about what the original message was. It is perfectly mixed, and because each round uses a different part of your key in the AddRoundKey step, every round makes it exponentially harder to crack. It is like putting your message through 10 to 14 different super complicated locks, each with its own part of the secret key. How do we unscramble it? Okay, so we've scrambled our message into complete gibberish, but how do we get it back? That's called decryption, and the cool thing about AES is that it's reversible. When you want to decrypt, you basically do everything backwards. Instead of 10 to 14 rounds going forward, you do 10 to 14 rounds going backward. Each of those 4 operations we learned has a reverse operation. Instead of SubBytes, you do inverse SubBytes, which uses a reverse lookup table to change the numbers back. Instead of ShiftRows going left, you do inverse ShiftRows and slide the rows to the right. Instead of MixColumns with one recipe, you do inverse MixColumns with the reverse recipe. And AddRoundKey is special. It's its own inverse. If you XOR with a key piece once, XORing with the same key piece again brings you back to the original. So decryption goes through the same grid, but applies the inverse of each operation in reverse order, using the key pieces in reverse order too. It's like watching a video in rewind. All the mixing and scrambling gets unwound, step by step, until your original message appears again perfectly intact. But here's the critical part. You must have the exact same key that was used for encryption. If even one bit of the key is wrong, the whole decryption fails and you get gibberish. That's what makes AES so secure. Why is AES so unbreakable? Let's talk about why AES is considered virtually unbreakable. First, there is the sheer number of possible keys. With a 128-bit key, there are, beginning with 3-4, ending with 5-6, possible combinations. That is a number with 39 digits. Even if you had a computer that could try 1 trillion keys per second, it would take billions of years to try them all. With 256-bit keys, the number of possibilities is so huge that it is bigger than the number of atoms in the observable universe. But it is not just about the number of keys. AES is also designed to resist all known types of attacks. Smart mathematicians and computer scientists have been studying AES for over 20 years, trying to find weaknesses or shortcuts. They have found tiny theoretical weaknesses that reduce the complexity a tiny bit, but even with these weaknesses, AES is still impossible to crack in practice. Another reason AES is so strong is the avalanche effect. This means that if you change just one tiny bit of the input message or one tiny bit of the key, the entire encrypted output changes dramatically. It is not like changing one letter in your message only changes one letter in the encrypted version. Changing one bit changes half of all the bits in the output on average. This makes it impossible to learn anything about the key or the message by comparing different encrypted messages. AES key sizes: which one to choose? We've mentioned that AES comes in 3 key sizes: 128-bit, 192-bit, and 256-bit. You might be wondering, which one should you use? Is bigger always better? Let's break it down. AES 128 uses a 128-bit key and does 10 rounds. This is the most commonly used version because it's the fastest and it's still incredibly secure. Even the NSA, the super-secret spy agency, approves AES 128 for encrypting secret government information. AES 192 uses a 192-bit key and does 12 rounds. It's more secure than AES 128, but honestly, AES 128 is already so secure that the extra security isn't usually necessary. AES 192 isn't used as much. AES 256 uses a 256-bit key and does 14 rounds. This is the most secure option and is approved by the NSA for top secret information. Many people use AES 256 when they want the absolute maximum security. Here's the thing though. All three versions are extremely secure. The difference between them is mostly theoretical. It's like comparing a vault door that's 10 thick to one that's 15 thick. Both are already impossible to break through. The choice often comes down to speed versus paranoia. AES 128 is faster. AES 256 is slightly slower but gives you that extra peace of mind. For most purposes, AES 128 is perfectly fine. Where is AES used? AES is truly ubiquitous in the digital world. Let us explore the various applications where AES works behind the scenes to maintain security. When you use Wi-Fi, your connection is encrypted with AES to prevent neighbors or hackers from monitoring your online activity. When you send a message on applications such as WhatsApp or Signal, AES encrypts your messages so only you and your friend can read them. When your parents shop online and enter their credit card number, AES encrypts that information so hackers cannot steal it. When you watch Netflix or YouTube, sometimes the video stream is encrypted with AES to prevent piracy. When you use online banking, AES protects your account information and transactions. Governments use AES to protect classified information and military communications. Companies use AES to protect trade secrets and customer data. Your smartphone uses AES to encrypt all the data stored on it, so if someone steals your phone, they cannot access your photos and files. Even your computer's hard drive can be encrypted with AES, protecting everything on it. Virtual private networks, or VPages, use AES to create secure tunnels for your internet traffic. In essence, whenever you see a padlock icon in your web browser, it is highly probable that AES is working to keep that connection secure. Modes of operation. Different ways to use AES. Here is something interesting. AES itself only encrypts 16 bytes at a time. That is our 4x4 grid. But most messages are way longer than 16 bytes. So, we need different strategies for encrypting longer messages. These strategies are called modes of operation. Let me explain some of them in simple terms. ECB mode, electronic codebook, is the simplest. You just encrypt each 16-byte block separately. But this has a problem. If your message has repeating patterns, those patterns will show up in the encrypted version too. It is like if you encrypted a picture, you could still see the outline of the image. So, ECB is rarely used for important stuff. CBC mode, cipher block chaining, is much better. Before encrypting each block, you mix it with the encrypted previous block. This way, identical blocks in your message encrypt to different things. It is like each block depends on all the blocks before it. CTR mode, counter, is really clever. Instead of encrypting your message directly, you encrypt a counter, 1, 2, 3, 4 and so on, and then mix the result with your message. This makes encryption faster, and you can encrypt blocks in parallel. GCM mode, Galois/counter mode, is super popular because it both encrypts your message and creates an authentication tag to prove nobody tampered with it. It is like encryption and a seal of authenticity in one. Each mode has its strengths, and the choice depends on what you are trying to protect and how fast you need it to be. How AES was born. The story. Let's talk about how AES came to be, because it's actually a pretty cool story. Back in the 1970s, there was an encryption standard called DES, Data Encryption Standard. DES was good for its time, but by the 1990s, computers had gotten so fast that DES could be broken. People needed something stronger, so in 1997, the US government announced a competition. They were looking for a new encryption standard to replace DES. They invited computer scientists and mathematicians from around the world to submit their best encryption algorithms. The requirements were tough. It had to be incredibly secure, it had to be fast, it had to work on all kinds of devices from supercomputers to smart cards, and it had to be free for anyone to use. 15 teams submitted their algorithms, and the competition was fierce. Two brilliant cryptographers from Belgium, Vincent Ryman and Joan Damon, submitted an algorithm they called Raindoll, pronounced Raindoll. For 3 years, the world's best cryptographers tried to break all the submitted algorithms. They analyzed them, tested them, and attacked them with every trick they knew. In the end, Raindoll proved to be the best combination of security, speed, and flexibility. In 2001, it was chosen as the winner and became the Advanced Encryption Standard, AES. Since then, AES has been the gold standard for encryption worldwide. It's been tested and attacked for over 20 years and is still standing strong. Common mistakes and how to avoid them. Even though AES itself is super secure, people can still make mistakes when using it. Let us talk about common errors so you can avoid them. Mistake number 1. Using a weak key. If someone chooses a key that is predictable, like all zeros or a simple pattern, then AES becomes vulnerable. Always use a random key generated by the computer. Never try to make up your own key. Mistake number 2. Reusing keys for different purposes. Each key should be used for only one specific purpose. If you use the same key to encrypt your email in your files, and someone figures out your email key, they have also figured out your file key. Mistake number 3. Using ECB mode for anything important. As we learned, ECB mode does not hide patterns well. Always use better modes like CBC, CTR, or GCM for real applications. Mistake number 4. Not protecting the key. It does not matter how strong AES is if you write your key on a sticky note or store it in an easy-to-find file. Keys must be stored securely, often encrypted with another key. Mistake number 5. Using the same IV or initialization vector twice with the same key in modes like CBC or CTR. This can leak information about your message. Always use a fresh, random IV for each encryption. The good news is that most software libraries handle these details correctly for you, so you do not have to worry about them as long as you use trusted, well-tested encryption software. The future of AES and quantum computers. You might have heard about quantum computers. These are super advanced computers that work in a completely different way from regular computers. They're so powerful that they could break some types of encryption that we use today. Should we be worried about AES? The short answer is, AES is pretty safe even against quantum computers. Here's why. There's a quantum algorithm called Grover's algorithm that can search through possible keys faster than regular computers. But even with Grover's algorithm, breaking AES 128 would require trying about 2 to the power of 64 possible keys. That's still about keys. And that's assuming we have a perfect quantum computer, which we don't yet. For AES 256, the security is even better. Grover's algorithm would need to try 2 to the power of 128 keys, which is still practically impossible. So while quantum computers make AES slightly weaker in theory, it's still incredibly secure in practice. Most experts recommend using AES 256 if you're worried about quantum computers in the future. This is very different from other types of encryption like RSA, which could be completely broken by quantum computers. That's one of the reasons AES is so great. It's not just secure today, but it's expected to remain secure for many decades to come, even as technology advances. The quantum-resistant cryptography field is active, but AES is expected to remain a core encryption standard for a very long time. Summary. You are now an AES expert. Wow, we've learned so much about AES today. Let's recap the most important things to remember. AES is the world's most trusted encryption standard, used everywhere from your phone to bank transactions to government secrets. It works by taking your message, putting it in a 4x4 grid, and then scrambling it through 10, 12, or 14 rounds depending on your key size. Each round does 4 operations. SubBytes swaps numbers using a lookup table. ShiftRows slides the rows around. MixColumns mixes each column with fancy math, and AddRoundKey mixes in a piece of your secret key. After all these rounds, your message is completely scrambled and looks like random gibberish. To decrypt, you do everything backwards with the same key. AES is virtually unbreakable because there are so many possible keys, more than the number of atoms in the universe for AES 256, and because it's been tested by the world's best cryptographers for over 20 years. You can choose from 3 key sizes: 128-bit, fast and secure; 192-bit, even more secure; or 256-bit, maximum security. AES is used everywhere: Wi-Fi, messaging apps, online shopping, banking, and more. Even quantum computers in the future won't be able to break AES easily. You now understand more about encryption than most adults, and you know how one of the most important technologies in the digital world works. Give yourself a huge high five. You're now an AES expert. Keep being curious about how technology works, and who knows, maybe someday you'll design the next generation of encryption. Thank you for your attendance. Please consider subscribing to the channel.